I think everybody that was waiting to come in is in. Welcome back to Journey to Oneness. This is week 2. So glad you could all.
Here, I gotta go.
Is someone speaking to me? Okay, there we go. So week 2 of Journey to Oneness for committed dating and engaged couples. So glad that you could be back with us. Tonight, we are going to talk about shared identity and healthy behaviors in relationships. So I think that I know that you all received the email with the video to watch prior to this. It was with Ron and Barbara. A little bit of background there. Ron and Barbara were marriage and family pastors here at Vineyard up until December of 2020 when he retired. Ron did, and they still kind of help us out and that kind of thing. But Ron is no longer pastor; he's no longer on staff. But he is just he's so good at family systems. We wanted to keep that going. And you also may remember his name from the book that you all have. That was Ron's thesis for his doctorate, Journey to Oneness, and also an inventory that we've talked about a few times. So, however, tonight I'm going to be teaching on this what we call the second half of shared identity. And if you did not get to watch that video, you may be a little bit lost, but I'll do my best to, keep it current to what we're talking about. If you did miss it, if you missed watching that video, I recommend going back to watch it. So tell me, does anyone tonight have any questions about last week or anything you want to say, or just like to start us out that way? No, really good.
I feel like there was a couple of couples that had really good questions that were put in the chat. And I know that someone mentioned they would get answered later. So, we're all in this to learn together and build as couples. And so, I don't know if those answers will be given or if those questions will be addressed, but I think that'd be a good start.
Oh, so from last week, is that what you mean?
Correct.
I'd have to pull that up. It's not the chat. Has not continued, or you know what? I've never tried that. Maybe it is. Can we go back to next week, or no? It's only this call so far. So, if we have a chance, we will look. I don't know if it'll happen tonight, but I will definitely look, Rob, make sure that they were all answered.
It's not possible, Kelly, to go back.
Oh, really? The chat's not there if I open them? No. Thank you, Brooke. I apologize.
Unless it was recorded and you saw it in the recording. I don't know.
Okay.
Hey, Kelly.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, good evening.
Hi, Donald.
How are you?
Good.
I think the concept was that the questions were going to be discussed in other materials. And we just need to make sure that all the materials that are planned are covered. And then as we get to that section, then the question can be refreshed.
Sure.
So, yeah, lots of questions about conflict resolution.
Okay. Yes, which is week 5. So we got a ways to go till we get there, but we're going to start on it tonight. If you by chance remember that you asked a question that wasn't answered last week, then please drop it in there again, and we will say specifically when we'll address that, or if we can wait. Okay. Thanks, Rob. Good catch. All righty then. Well, let's start for tonight. How many people in this that are on tonight had heard of family systems theory before you listened? Okay, a few of us here. Yeah. It is a a secular concept. It is, it has to do with as we talked about the last week, the family of origin, the way you were raised, the relationships you had, the meaning you made. And so we're going to go a little bit more into it, as Ron did in his pre-class video. So opening up, I'm not going to, I think I am going to share my PowerPoint. I think I am. Let's see if I can do that, or if I need Mindy to do it. Yep. Mindy's with us. So if you can share that Anxious Systems PowerPoint, Mindy, we're going to get started. Maybe, oh, there she goes. Great. Thank you, Mindy. All right. So the first slide here is just a little funny, just to help you think through this. I've always loved this because it's so true about being human, isn't it? Everyone wants change. We all know when something isn't how it should be, or even, you know, like when we're ready for something to be different than we want it. And then how many of us know how hard it is to change? So again, this is just a great little example of that. So going to the first slide, we're going to talk about differentiation again. Ron introduced it, but just so we can be sure about this, we can see what we're talking about: to be a non-anxious presence in an anxious situation. And one of the things that I like to say here is that when I first learned about this, I thought to myself, this sounds impossible. I don't think I can do this. And then I realized, when I thought about, well, what does Jesus expect of us? And I realized, oh, this sounds like Jesus. Like, he's the person I know that can be a non-anxious presence in an anxious situation. He always was. I don't know how familiar you are with the scriptures, but as you go through them and you see Jesus interacting with the Father, interacting with others, even when they were trying to trap him or trick him, he always came back with a non-anxious response. And so Jesus calls us to be like him. Whether or not we'll ever attain that in this life is a whole other story. But so we can make this for sure a goal, or a way to think about a way to be in our relationships. And of course, it's one of the hardest things to do, or the relationship it's the hardest to do is in marriage. I would say second to that is parenting, but some folks might have different experiences. So we talk about that as being the capacity to be an I, yet remain relationally connected. And so one of the things about that is the two of you don't have to agree about everything. One of the things I realize is that a lot of conflict is for someone to be right, is the idea that someone has to be right, or that one person's right, one person's wrong. We have to see it the same. And the truth is that is not always the case. You will find times when when both of you disagree, and it's okay. It's okay to have a differing view. We often say, if you agree on everything, one of you isn't necessary. Actually, I think it's Rich Nathan, our pastor, our founding pastor at Vineyard Columbus. He used to say that. So, and remember what Ron talked about, that your spouse or your dating partner, fiance, belong to God. They are accountable to him. He's the one that's going to work in their lives as the two of you grow. So you're responsible for you and God, and your partner is responsible for themselves and them and God. And the two of you get to share, which is what our class is about tonight. So sharing your identities with one another when you have common values, common goals, and you work together with one another, being committed to develop a shared identity. Next slide. So there is anxiousness in every relationship.
Just put it down.
And so we want to just identify that. Anxiousness is everywhere. It's normal. It happens to all of us. And so there's a lot of focus on anxiety these days. And what I like to say is it's always been around. People have always been anxious. We're in situations in our current culture that are really trying. And anxiousness is probably heightened. It's higher. There's more anxiousness going on. But we can say that it has always been here. And so we can't eliminate it. It cannot be done away with in any relationship. When we are really highly of conflict, when a person does not want to be in any conflict, it makes it really difficult to ever resolve. And so knowing that anxiousness is completely normal and we can do it, we can work through that, is really important for those folks who avoid it. Similarly, when someone feels like they go after that conflict, they want to resolve it, they are not afraid to disagree and hash it out and debate, they also need to know that a certain amount of anxiousness is normal and it's okay to let it be there in the relationship. And again, the key here is that you remember to remain relational rather than having the resolution of a conflict be important, rather than to be right, rather than to be heard even sometimes. That's always helpful in a relationship, but sometimes it's going to take time and you need to be willing to say this relationship is the most important thing. Okay, next slide. Here we go. Okay, so we're going to talk about triangles. This is something that we use, just a symbol that's used in family systems. And being triangled means that you get triangled into something that is not your responsibility. So if you think about it as an issue, let's say there's an issue in a couple's life. You have husband and wife on either corner. And then the third where the question mark is, that's the issue. So what we're going to talk about now is how to identify what the most important thing is, how it sometimes gets put in the responsibility for the issue gets put in the wrong place and how we can put it back in the right place. Okay, next. So the definition of identified patient, this would be the person who is upset, who is anxious. A lot of times, all of the attention goes to them and they are considered the person that something's wrong with. But what we want to do is look at it and see if that's actually the case. So when one person in a relationship begins to carry the weight of the anxiousness because they're emotional or concerned or confrontational, it's sometimes happens that they're considered the identified patient. Next slide.
That's a question.
Oh, yes, please.
So is there any significance with the placement of the husband, the question mark, and the wife in a hierarchical manner on the triangle, or is that just so happen to be where they're placed?
Just so happen.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
Yeah, absolutely not. You may want to talk about that in a few minutes, but so as I said before, there is the issue. And what's happening is something's going on between the husband and wife. Maybe it's disrespect. Maybe one person feels that the other is being irresponsible. Maybe one person is judging the other person. Maybe one person is feeling abandonment. One of the examples I like to use is if, let's say one person is working a lot and the other person feels like it's too much. And they're upset about the amount of time that the other person is working. Well, that can become, let's just say for this sake, that the husband is working too much and the wife is upset about it. Okay. What happens here is the wife becomes the identified patient, right? Because she's upset. The thing that needs to be remembered is that it's not her problem. She does have a problem with the husband working too much, but what she needs to do is tell the husband how she feels and let him deal with the issue. Let he and God work on that. So when the wife tries to make the change happen, she's going to interfere with what needs to be happening between the husband and his work schedule or his work-life balance, whatever we want to call it. Next slide.
Hey, Kelly.
Yes.
So one of the things that, and we're here, so we're going to butt in. So
Go ahead, guys.
But one of the things that we kind of learned from you, and I don't know if this is your verbiage or someone else's verbiage, that in a situation of anxiousness, which is an issue, right? That's really what we're talking about. It's a determination of whose side of the street is it on. And that's kind of the person that needs to be working it out with God. Michelle's responsibility and my responsibility is to make them aware of how it impacts me. But then the issue becomes between whoever side of the street it sets on and God to work out. Yes.
Great retelling, Donald. That was really helpful. It's really important, guys. If you can imagine how many times, a week or a month or a year this needs to happen in a relationship, we need to be reminded. We need to remind ourselves. And we also need to be able to say how something is impacting us without the other person defending themselves too much. I mean, we are humans, remember? But we want to be able to say that. And that's what this teaching is kind of trying to help you get your arms around. Like, it could be okay for us just to disagree. I can say how this is impacting me, and then I can allow you to work this out, to keep that on that side of the street in Donald's analogy. It's good? Yes. Caitlin?
Yeah, I just had a sort of a follow-up question about this. So I guess what I'm wondering is when we're talking about, your partner has come to you and said, I have an issue, and they, explain how some sort of behavioral process is affecting them and the relationship. And so I guess what I'm confused about is, why isn't the partner who initially has the problem not really involved in the solution? What do we mean by it's the other partner's responsibility between them and God to resolve the issue? Because what does that mean? Because I guess what my concern is that could easily turn into one person says, well, I have a problem and here's what it is. Now you go fix it. And then the other person, they don't understand, it just kind of gets dropped on them, and they're like, well, I'm supposed to go and talk to God about this. And maybe I don't think that there is a problem or something, something like that. I don't know. I guess I'm wondering, how nuanced is this, and what does this look like really in practice? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. When I think of what you're saying, I think sometimes maybe this teaching's too early in the class. This is kind of meant to set a baseline for things. But it is definitely not true that you don't have anything to say about it. It's just that the working out of it. Remember when, I don't know if you saw the video, but Ron and Barbara talked about overfunctioning and underfunctioning. And so when one person tries to help the other person solve the issue, then they begin to overfunction. It allows the other person to underfunction. And then that's where things begin to get really unbalanced. And so the way that we speak to one another, the way that we honor one another and respect one another when these things come up is what we're like giving an overview to today. In future weeks, probably starting in the next couple of weeks, we're going to talk about ways that couples discuss what it is that needs to be changed or what it is that they're having an issue with, what they would like to be different is the language we use. And then the person, let's see, I'm going to try and make this really clear. So if I have an issue with my husband, the way that we do that is I say, is that he says, what would you like to be different about the number of hours I work per week? And I would say, well, I would like there to be maybe some consistency or certain nights that are just when you're home or whatever. And then it would be his responsibility to say to me, okay, what can I do to make that better? What would it look like specifically? What would you like to have? So you see here, in that way, the person, my husband, is able to invite me in. And we're able to discuss that. But it is not ever a thing where I say, well, this is what you need to do. And this is what has to happen. I'm tired of this. I don't like this. I'm not going to, there's more of a respect and a commitment to differentiation. And saying, and again, I'm getting a little ahead of myself, so I'm going to stop now. But you kind of get the idea that this is scary, right? When you think, oh, I'm not going to have any say in this, but you are, and you should. This is the base. This is the foundation for good communication. And remember, having your own identity while being connected to another person. So hang with me. And Caitlin, I really want you to put your hand up again if if I'm still missing something for you.
So I just wanted to add one thing, because so like Caitlin asked a really good question. And like when Aaron and I watched the video, Ron and his wife gave an example of her mother needed financial support. And he said, look, this is not something I can tell you how to do or how to respond to it. And so he gave her the advice to pray about it, see what God puts on your heart, and then come back and let's talk about it as a group. And then he said they prayed about it together as a group, and then they made a decision. So I think thinking about that in the video is probably both. Well, like you probably have to pray to God and then, come back with your partner and talk through it as a couple and then see where you. But that's kind of what I took out of the video.
Good job, Antione. Yeah, absolutely. And, that is what I would call differentiation. That's another way to describe that, is that we can talk about it. We can be ourselves. We can talk to God ourselves, and then we can come back together and stay connected, even if maybe we don't understand that. So anything else? This is good conversation. I like this. Okay, next slide. Okay, so when we're triangled, of course, it's a really good idea to get untriangled. And remembering that my husband gets to be him and I get to be me, and we can still have this connected relationship. So even if we disagree about something, we're going to have to come back to it. We can't really see eye to eye. I tell myself, I say to myself, this is not who we are. This disagreement, this thing that we don't agree on, does not define us. We are more than this. This is not the only thing that is true about us. And for some of us, conflict can get in the way like that. And so as we decide that even if we can't agree, or we're working through something, we can remain relationally connected. And it's going to look different in every couple and each individual. But when you decide that's what it's going to be like, those actually are your covenant vows. You say, no matter what comes up, I am going to do what I said I will do, just love you and cherish you and believe in you and take responsibility for myself. So it will help us to remain emotionally, spiritually, physically, relationally connected through all things. And the other thing is, the thing that I think is often really hard to do, we're going to talk about this later in the class as well, is to remain curious about why the other person is asking for this change. Rather than saying, you've misunderstood me, or becoming defensive. You don't know what it's like for me. Instead of, like running to your defense so that you will be seen as being good. Saying, okay, that's not really the most important thing right now. The most important thing right now is me to be curious about what is going on in this other person. Sometimes like it's been directed at you and maybe it isn't at all. One of my favorite examples of this is when my husband said that I wasn't a good listener. I might have even mentioned this last week, but hopefully it bears repeating. And so, I could have said, what are you talking about? Like, I am a good listener because I am, because I'm told by lots of people what a good listener I am. But instead, I had to say, why would he say that? There's something going on. And so in that, I was curious. I said, what would make him say that? What's he experiencing? And then he's allowed to tell me without me being defensive and without me having to be right. So you see the anxiousness that comes up in me when I'm criticized, it's going to do that. Like that is completely natural. That's what happens in human beings. But I can learn to say, whoa, back down. Let's find out what this is about before you go after that, or if you go after it at all. And so do your best to not defend yourself if your partner is unhappy or dissatisfied with you. What if that becomes okay? What if that becomes the ability to talk through things? That's what this is about. Next slide, please. Okay, so as this happens, right now, the wife is becoming, she says, I'm going to be a non-anxious presence. I'm not going to be the one to resolve this. I've shared with my husband how I feel about it. We've talked about possible solutions. She has become untriangled then. And he gets to work with God and with his work, his employment or his business. And then they get to come back and talk about what that will look like. Okay, next slide. All right, I've kind of gone over this, so let's keep going. Next slide. Again, next slide. Okay, so Ron and Barbara talked in the video about the family of origin and pattern of connectedness or developing. So the role that you took on in your family, and he gave some examples. They both did. Here we have some more. This is going to impact how you do anxiousness, right? So for some folks, for the hero, when they can't make it better, that's going to make them anxious. For the mediator or peacemaker, when they don't have the answer, that's going to make them anxious. For the healer, all of those things, that's where this anxiety comes from. And when you learn what that is, again, you can identify it in yourself and learn to manage it. We cannot eliminate anxiety. We can only manage it. But we can manage it well. We can really learn to do that. Hold on just a second while I check my notes. Having a little feeling. Okay, I think this is where we're going to do an interactive. Might be a little early on this, but let's go right to that. And so in your participant's guide, Anybody that can help me out here? Not be so slow. I'm gonna head there. Let's see. Page 17. Page 28. Got someone ahead of me there. Yeah. Okay, the class interactive on page 28. So I'm going to give you guys some time to talk about yourselves to one another. We're going to just you can turn your camera off if you want while you talk, but identify and discuss each other's pattern of connectedness, how similar or different you are. So of course, that's going to take some time. We're going to give you, I think, like probably 7 minutes to talk about what you think your role was in your family. If you've already talked about that, or once you have, then you're going to talk about what kind of connectedness there was in your family and what it was like for you. Okay, so I'm going to keep an eye on the clock and you guys can go now. Okay, everybody, about another 30 seconds. Let you finish your conversation. Okay, everybody want to come back? Turn your screens back on. Looks like we lost a couple of people. Just kidding.
Matt's having to jump back into the Zoom call, so
Ah,
he'll be here.
fine. Okay. Well, why don't we get started? I just wanted to have some of you share maybe what you learned or what you discussed, what your roles were in your family. It really helps for us to hear other people's experiences. Who's going to start us out? Nobody? Come on, y'all. I was
We'll
gonna
start.
say, okay, good.
Go.
Yeah. So what we found out was that in our family systems, we were both really peacekeepers,
Mhm.
and that was the role we had growing up. So we never really learned healthy ways to deal with conflict. And one of the biggest struggles that we've had is learning how to ask for things that we want. That has been a really difficult problem as we grew up as peacekeepers.
Mhm.
Yes, that's right. What he said.
Okay. Anybody else?
Yeah, I'll go. This is Remy and
Hi,
Gracie.
Rem.
Hi. Yeah. So we on our side, I think I grew up in a family where they gave me a lot of space to think independently, and I would say that I would always internally process a situation before engaging or bringing someone in.
Mm.
So I had that independency. Growing up, but I was also very connected to my family, like parents and sisters. And then I think on Gracia's side, who also grew up in a bigger family than mine, with I think 4 or 5 siblings. She, correct me if I'm wrong, Gracia, but she,
Yes, you can tell us.
yes, where is she? I can't see her. Oh yeah,
That's
go ahead,
okay. She's there.
Gracia.
Thank you.
You want to go ahead, Gracia? Okay.
Yes, sorry, my mic was not working. I found that first of all, we're both peacemakers, sorry. And then I was the type of person who I was identifying more with the closeness with my family compared to Remy. He's more independent and I tend to rely on my family most of the time. So, yeah.
Okay, so does that mean that that you found yourself more dependent, Gracia, or and
Yeah.
Okay, and
Yeah.
just if I might ask you, hold on just a second. I gotta let somebody back in. Oh, Pardon me, guys, just 1 minute. Got a little admin here to do. And I think Matt was trying to get back in. And now I don't see him there. Oh, there he is. Yay. Okay. So have you noticed that, Remy and Gracia, have you noticed that coming up in your relationship at all? Was that like, oh yeah?
A big yes for me, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, I agree. I agree with Gracia. I will say that if a situation or conflict, I will need some time or I will need space to kind of think about it independently. And then with Gracia, I think she will come to me or engage first before taking that on her own.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I think that's a great example, but we feel that the way we do it is what?
The right way. Yes.
And it's just a really great place to say, oh, I do that.
Mhm.
Like, or, being right is important. Doing it the right way. And honestly, I don't think any of us can be completely objective when it comes to this.
Mhm.
In some areas, you may be right, quote unquote, right. In some areas, you may not. In some areas, it doesn't matter who's right or wrong. It matters that you're curious, that you understand one another, that it's okay to be different.
Hey, Kelly,
Oh,
can I add something again? I'm sorry. And just so you know, I've got a 7 o'clock men's group starting, so I'll be done soon. So everyone can continue on their way. But that's a great example of the issue and the triangulation that you were showing earlier. I think because what we want is for both of them to understand that they're not necessarily right or wrong, but they have to respect each other in the way that they deal with an issue.
yeah.
And one of the things that Michelle and I will do a lot of times when we're coaching couples, we'll talk to couples about, hey, how does he process? How do you process? And we have to allow each other the opportunity, or else we start to function out of our emotions and we start to function out of that anxiousness that you were talking about. So unless we give each other the space and some flexibility, we're not able to get out of that anxiousness, and that issue continues to grow.
I like that. Just real quick, when Donald said that, emotions and anxiousness kind of are the same thing. And it's not that it's wrong to be emotional. It's when, right. I know you didn't mean that. I just wanted to clarify that when your emotion takes over and then you become more anxious, like the anxiety infiltrates into the way you're connecting with one another, that's when the emotion can be over the top. Some of us are feelers, though. We're going to feel it all. And those thinkers and, more like confident people, it's just as important for you to, well, I just identified myself as a feeler, sorry. But it's just as important for thinkers and doers to come to feelers as it is the opposite. And we're going to talk, as I said, we are going to talk about that more week 5 with conflict resolution, but be recognizing where you might be trying to get the other person to come over to your side rather than finding out what's going on for them. Who else? Anybody else find this? I really did want to enter into that differentiation, dependence, independence. See anybody else notice that? What did you think your role in your family was?
I can share.
Thank you, Jody.
Yeah, we were talking, and I don't know, maybe because I'm still kind of trying to understand this concept a little bit, but whenever, because I am also a feeler and emotional, so this is really, and have like kind of that anxious like tendency with things, but I come from a family of four sisters, a family of five, and I was right in the middle. And Paul is an only child and was raised by his grandparents. So we have very, very different family dynamics. And I was certainly the peacekeeper in my family. And it was a very unhealthy family. So my parents weren't like the greatest, at least their marriage wasn't the greatest role model, where my father was very dominant and could be like emotionally abusive. So I was always seeing conflict. Like I hate conflict and I just want to resolve it quickly. And just kind of realizing that when I feel something and I bring it up with Paul, that I just want to fix it. Like I want to bring it up, I want to fix it, and I want to like move on and kind of like figure out the situation, rather than like, it's more of just like me working independently rather than trying to figure out how to talk through it like together really, and try it. Because like Paul will say like, oh, I didn't even like know anything was going on a lot of times when I bring things up, where I like stew over it and have this anxiety until it kind of like bubbles up and then kind of spills out things that I've been like thinking or feeling. And he's just kind of like what, what are you talking about? So
I'm curious, Paul, what were things just matter-of-factly brought up in your family? Did people just talk about it when they needed to talk about it?
I don't know, so I was raised by my grandparents and they were pretty, pretty traditional. My grandma, did all the cooking and cleaning. Grandpa would come home, hand her the paycheck, and she would take care of that kind of stuff. So, I don't know. I don't recall that really talking about much. My grandpa would pretty much do whatever my grandma said to do.
I love that.
And, I don't ever really remember any conflict resolution. Grandma kind of ran the house and grandpa worked, and if you were really bad, she might threaten to tell grandpa, but that was about it.
Okay. Well, that's helpful. That's really, I think for the two of you to see that that you had, neither of you really like had a chance to say what was going on.
Right.
I was never as a child, we didn't get any say. There was none of this intervention. It was keep your mouth shut. We're the adults. And do it. That's kind of how it was. I didn't really have.
Yeah. So it's good for the two of you to be able to use your relationship as a kind of a practice. Like you get to practice what's going on, and you might need to even draw one another out by asking questions. Paul, you might be inclined to go, there's nothing to talk about, but if Jody says there is, maybe give it a try. See where it takes you. And Jody, tell me what's coming up for you as you listen to that.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. Like, definitely, I think sometimes we have difficulty just like talking things out, because we both come from that, like, just because it was the same for me. Keep your mouth shut, don't have an opinion, like in a different way than in his upbringing. But so I think it's difficult for the both of us to talk through things. So that's helpful just to work on it together. So.
Last week we said a little bit about, what if you didn't have a traditional family growing up? Here's an example of two people that had two parents and they had a marriage modeled for them, and neither of them were, completely healthy. They had some things that were modeled for them that were not maybe what they would like for their relationship going forward. And so that's why we do this thinking and talking, through things, is to say, what really is in my DNA, is in the fiber of my being, and how does God want to engage me around that? Like for instance, Paul and Jody, how is your ability to talk to Jesus about what's going on before you bring it to the other person? That's something that I've learned has changes everything. Like it really does. Now I still might mess up and do a poor job of trying to relay my feelings, but the idea of being able to process it with Jesus first, maybe even let him say to me, now, is that who you want to be, Kelly? Is that how you want to show up in this? Do you really think, just to ask me questions? I don't know about you, but when I can talk to Jesus honestly, then he can ask me questions. He can say things back to me. And I have noticed, interestingly, that in scripture, he always answers a question with a question. And with me, he almost always asks me a question. And it's one that's meant to draw me out, to kind of calm all of the excitement or the hurt or whatever it is, and say, do you know that I am with you? Do you know that you are loved? Do you know that I can go with you into this? Do you know that I have answers that you haven't even thought of? That's what when we say shared identity, shared values, couple each has God and comes together. Those are the kind of things that we're talking about. Does anybody else want to share or ask a question about what we've said? See, there's some things in the chat. Let's see. Oh, no, that was just, never mind. That was just to let Matt back in. Okay, so anybody, I wanted to talk about this idea of I dependence. Did everybody understand what was meant by that when Ron explained that? I dependence. Okay, so you're comparing it to dependence or independence. It's kind of an extreme form of independence. So when you have I dependence, you have someone who they're the only people they have to answer to. Authority is an issue or a problem for them. Anyone in authority over them brings anxiousness up or may cause conflict. And so sometimes we can be that way in just certain areas of our life, like let's say finances. Nobody is going to tell me how to spend my money or what to do with my money. And it doesn't matter what you say or think. This is mine, and I'm not budging. So it may take the form of relationships, of authorities. It may even go as far as to God. And when you think about our culture, everyone, we are an independent culture. Americans, the United States, we are independent and we do not want to be told what to do, right? We love our independence. And so thinking about a relationship with God requires us to be submissive, or to think about it as him knowing better what we need for ourselves than we do. And that is a huge area of trust. When I say, I don't like what my spouse is doing. My husband, this is not going to be okay. It's not going to work. And then I say, but I want you, Lord, to be in charge here. I don't want to be the one that makes all the decisions. That's what it means to be differentiated. In a way, it's when you say, I don't know all the answers. I don't have all of the information. I need to go to God first. So if you sense that in yourself, in any, let's say around parenting, gosh, most of you, I think, don't have kids yet, but I always say when my husband and I got married, well, we got pregnant on our honeymoon. Did I tell you that last week? So I wasn't supposed to be able to have kids. I have type 1 diabetes. And when I was diagnosed at 20, they told me I could never get pregnant and I never should try to get pregnant. So I believed them, right? And fast forward 11 years or 13, I think. Anyway, I met my husband at 33. We got married at 34, pregnant the same month. So, so the doctors were wrong, or God performed a miracle. We don't know which. But it was a crazy pregnancy. It was really rough. We had to come together to get through it. And that's like for the first 2 or 3 years, we never had an argument. I am not exaggerating, you guys. We were fine with everything. And then came parenting. And you know what? I found out I was a mama bear. And my husband had completely different views on children, on parenting, on discipline, on everything. I mean, it was like, we just discovered these two different people, but because we didn't know we had agreed we would not have kids unless we decided in the future to adopt. We agreed about that. We never talked about it. So it was a huge surprise to me that he felt the way he did. Example, children are born evil and they have to have it like trained out of them. And mine was they're born pure and they learn from us how to be evil. You couldn't be on two further ends of the stick. And so it took a lot of work for us. And we talked to a pastor several times. We just agreed to disagree. We would we would take a week and pray and come back together. Anyway, it was a big deal. And so parenting can be that place where you start to say, this is not okay what this other person wants. And yet I had to say, God made my husband the father of this child as well as me, the mother. And so I have to be willing to listen to his perspective. And even if I don't agree with it, and we need to learn how to do this together. So I remember once a pastor said, Kelly, I think you should listen to him. I was like, what? That was not what I was thinking I would hear you say. But again, there's where learning comes in. And so, as we think about this dependence, independence, we have to be willing to take responsibility for what we bring to our relationship. What is the stuff I'm bringing? What am I willing to work on? Because, you could stay single and maybe you would never have to do this. Although I think, it happens in families and in workplaces, but nonetheless, being married means you have the gift of being able to grow together and to have all these amazing things, like when I think of how much love there is between my husband and I, it came out of a lot of struggle and a lot of wonderful times. Like I said, 3 years, no disagreements. So over the years, it has been an amazing gift to be able to know that today we may be at odds, but I get to wait and see what will happen. And then I see, oh, we got through that. We did okay. We did great. God really came through. He did something we would never have expected. And so that's how we get the grace or the confidence to go into marriage and to say, I want to have a shared identity with you. I want to become one. So tell me, anybody got anything going on? Jody, I really appreciated you saying that you're still trying to understand this, because I think it can take some time, or, it's so opposite of what we hear in our culture where, it's always me first. That's kind of how it goes. So if anybody has any questions, let me know. And I also wanted to say, if this has piqued your interest, if you think you'd like to learn more, there's a really wonderful book about family systems, and it's called Growing Yourself Up, which I love that title. Basically, what it's saying is, I see the places in me that are not grown up yet, that are stuck, when that happened to me at 12 or 6 or 18 or 21. I see that, and I want to take those areas and begin to work and say, what do I need to do? And by the way, Growing Yourself Up, I'm pretty sure it's not a Christian book, but it'll help you to maybe spend some more time if you really want to think more about this. Or you can call me, we can talk. Like, I'm here anytime if you have questions you'd like to talk about it. So last chance, well, it's not your last chance, but before I move on, anybody have anything to say?
Kelly, hey, this is Cecil.
Hi there.
I was so I'm kind of like unique. I was laughing hysterically. So I'm divorced now with 2 kids, and as you talked about I call it just hanging out with someone else was easy. Then once you had the kids, it all kind of fleshed out, and I think now with this class with me and Maria is very helpful. Which I would have done it the first time, but how to effectively work through difficult issues and this stuff here, because the parenting, big difference just being in my 20s and just kind of hanging out versus suddenly having young kids and the problems and issues and biases from how we grew up kind of came in. So how you guys navigated through that's just kind of funny to hear, but glad you handled it well.
Thank you, Cecil. It is unique. You know, it's one of the reasons we say having shared values is really important. You know, we were both Christians, just from 2 different worlds, 2 different Christian worlds. So, yeah.
Hey, can I ask you a question? Because I'm still trying to make sure I clarify to understand. So I'm still trying to go by the husband, wife, and was it take your stuff to your spouse and then to God? Can you just walk through again what you're exactly saying? I just want to make sure I understood it.
Happy to. The idea is that you go to God first. You are first a child of God.
Mm-hmm.
Belong to God. Your connection to Him is the most true thing about you. And so when you've gone to Him first, often, very often, it will bring your anxiety down so that you can go to your partner and be able to talk about it with a little less anxiousness. You may still have anxiety. You may still have some anger, some frustration, some fear, you know, but when we take it to God, He promises us that He will be with us. He knows me better than I know myself. He knows, like, so what He says is my anxiousness belongs to Him. You know, in Scripture, if you are weary and heavy laden, bring your burden to me, and because mine is light. I want to take that burden from you. And He doesn't always take it away, but He helps us. He says, I'll, you know, I always see the picture of Him, you know what a yoke is on oxen. There's 2 oxen. You know, often I feel like I'm doing it on my own, like I'm all alone. This is from my childhood. And I see Him taking His shoulder and coming up under that and lifting it so that I can bear the weight that I'm supposed to bear. I'm not supposed to bear it all on my own. I have Him, and He comes in and He says, let me help you carry this. This doesn't have to look the way it does. This can be different. And so in my marriage, often what my mind wants to do is draw a conclusion. This is never going to be a good. This is always going to be bad. This is the hardest thing that's ever happened. And He says, wait a minute, there's a lot more things that are true than that. It's how you feel right now. And that's okay. I'm here with you. But what if, you know, once we get through some of this unpacking, you can go in and you can do it. Does that help, Cecil?
Got it. So replaying that back, what it says, take it to God first. Don't kind of necessarily go to your spouse. Allow Him, hear what God has to say. Then from that, then you go take it to your spouse.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And we'll be looking at this in a couple more classes. We'll be continuing to look at it. So I love, yes, Michelle.
I just want to be really encouraging to you guys that, you know, this class is called Journey for a reason, that you don't have to have it all figured out tonight. like, I love it that people are taking notes. I mean, that's amazing, but just know that really some of this is just exploration so that you can learn something about your partner that maybe you didn't know before. And like, I can tell you for Donald and I, like, just realizing that he was like Remy, where he wanted to be off on his own processing. When I figured that out, and we figured it out in this class, it was so freeing, because immediately I thought he was angry. He was mad. He was putting distance between us. And now I know when he's quiet like that, he's just working his stuff out. And so I really want to encourage you guys that some of this is just, we don't ask these kind of questions of ourselves usually, and we certainly don't ask them of our partner. So just, I love it that you guys are jumping into it, but it's, you're going to be kind of dealing with this and thinking about it and rethinking about it for years to come, because it's just a process. So give yourself some grace in it. And just as you learn new things about who you are and who your partner is, just being able to share those and communicate those, that'll just do so much good for your marriage.
Amen. Amen. I agree. Well, okay, guys. Thank you, Michelle. One of the things that comes along with this class is what we call healthy behaviors. And I am going to kind of run through it a little quickly. But what I want to say before I do is that we can talk about it in a private session if you need to. If you don't understand it, ask questions tonight. But we put this in here to help couples to look again at all of the stuff that they're bringing into their relationship. And healthy, unhealthy behaviors actually comes from the idea that some of us learn controlling behaviors in our families of origin or in our previous relationships. And we belong to God. My husband doesn't belong to me. I don't belong to him, but we are definitely very close, very much sharing things. So if I am exhibiting controlling behaviors, it's unhealthy, and vice versa. And if we see it in each other, it's really normal for us to call it out these days. So when I say unhealthy behaviors, I'm talking mostly about things that could be interpreted as controlling. And we need to be aware. We need to be self-aware. And if you actually feel that there's something like this in your partner's life, make sure to check yourself first before saying that to them, right? Like to bringing it up with them. But what we want to say is that we never want to think that when we get married, it'll be better. And I can say this about anything. We don't want to go into marriage saying, oh, it'll be better when we get married. The number one thing like that is pornography. So folks, a lot of people believe if they're trying to abstain, which is a biblical value, they're abstaining from sex before marriage. One of them or both of them have they use that. They think, oh, after we get married or when we're having sex, we won't need that anymore. And I would tell you I've almost never found that to be true. At least maybe I only hear from the people it wasn't true for. I don't know. I'll be honest there. But I will tell you that it's something that doesn't change. And so we never want to go into marriage thinking that will get better. What you want to say is, even if this never changes, I want to be with this person. I never want to be without them. This is something I don't like. This is something that I'm not comfortable with. This is something that is hard for me, but I know I want to be with this person. Because I can't control what my husband does, right? He belongs to God. He's an individual. I can't change him. And when I don't tell myself the truth, when I hide and I say, well, maybe it'll get better, or I'll try this, or we'll do that, I'm not being honest with myself. I'm not telling myself the truth. And then we're off to the races. So what we want to do is say, even if this never changes, this is what I want. And so these unhealthy behaviors, another thing we call them sometimes are non-negotiables. There's actually a lesson in your book about that you can go through on your own. Non-negotiables are a little bit different. They're things that where you say, this is something, well, it really is the same. This is something I cannot do. For instance, for somebody, it might be, I cannot marry someone who's not a believer, who's not a Christian. Another person might say, I can't marry someone who drinks, because let's say they grew up in an alcoholic family and it triggers them and they aren't comfortable with it. Another person might say, I can't marry someone who has debt. Like I remember one couple, it was one of the most painful things I ever walked through with a couple. It was that she heard that she had medical debt, a really bad illness, and she was off work for a couple of years. And so she was paying off this debt. Well, he saw that if they got married, he would have to take that debt on and it would delay his retirement. And he couldn't do it. So for him, his plan for his life was the most important thing for him. Being married was second. And that was really painful, but he was honest. Now you or I might not agree with what he did, but we have to say, this is something that I know will make it really difficult for me to be in this relationship. So again, this is not why you're here. You all are committed dating, you're engaged, you're moving toward marriage. But I'm going to go through these just before we're done, it'll take about 5 minutes. So we want to identify behaviors and attitudes that are good, and we want to identify behaviors and attitudes that are indicators of one person trying to have power and control. And again, we are all guilty of this. We all have the ability to do this. You may be at a place in your life where you've really, for the most part, overcome it, and that's great. But we want to make sure that we do that. So verbal abuse produce shame and fear. And so we don't want to be using verbal criticism or things that say negative things about our partner that are not what God says about them. And so words are used to label, and they might even be used to define a person. So name calling is never okay. Ugly, crazy, stupid, fat, emotional, whatever. Defining statements like you're too sensitive, or you're just so emotional, or, you're so codependent, anything like that. You're irresponsible. When you're labeling someone, you need to get that in check before you move forward. You need to be able to stop doing that. And if that's not coming up for the first time tonight for you, again, we're here to help you talk through it and work through it. Give you a plan of attack, going forward. None of these things has to stop a relationship, you guys. None of them do. Emotional abuse includes verbal assaults, like withholding affection and sympathy. When we do that, we are not differentiated. We're saying this thing is the most important thing, and until we have this resolved, I'm not going to be connected to you. So we're withholding affection and sympathy, rarely complimenting or giving any good feedback to the other person. Sometimes that's just a personality. That's just your personality. You don't want compliments, you don't give them, but never saying anything positive can be really difficult on a relationship. You guys got to figure that out between the two of you. Criticizing all the time, always pointing out flaws, things that are wrong, doing it in a shaming way. Again, that's not okay. Humiliating in front of others, which can often be masked by humor. If you find that you're one of those people that uses humor and the other person's the brunt of your joke, that may need, some people say, oh, we like sarcasm. That's our love language is sarcasm. Well, that may work when you're first getting to know each other and in dating, but I don't know many couples where it works. married couples. It's really not good. So those are ideas, those are examples of emotional abuse. And then physical abuse is any of these: hitting, pushing, slapping, like, slapping an arm, slapping a leg, shaking, pinching, biting, restraining, grabbing. And then the last one is choking, which is obvious. Any of those things are considered physical abuse, and we have to call it what it is. And again, if your relationship has crossed any of those lines, you have to be willing to bring it to someone that can help. You don't want to think, oh, that won't happen again. It's got to be the thing that has to happen is the person who did that and the person who was done to need to be able to say, this is why this is happening. This is what I'm going to do to take care of this. Again, I'm moving quickly, but you've got some stuff to read in your participants guide there. So here's some other things about physical abuse: additional offenses that are violation of a person's rights. So we cannot tell someone what they can and cannot do. You can't break their cell phone or something of value that's really important to them. Punching a wall, often that means you're next. Not always, but you could be next. So punching something, hitting something, throwing something, blocking someone from leaving a room or the home or their car. Like, you can't make someone stay in the car with you. That's abusive. If someone says, stop, I want out, then you must do that. Physically restraining someone, like making sure they can't move, or threatening physical harm. And the thing that I want you to know is that I've mentioned these things because some people might have an idea of what they think domestic abuse or domestic violence or physical abuse is, and they might not include them all. I'm sorry, I got distracted by the comment, but I'll get back to that. So what it is that you are saying, there are these things that I do that. Like, that is something that I do. Where is that controlling behavior coming from? And again, if this has happened in your relationship before, find someone you can talk to about it. Because every couple, well, I shouldn't say every couple, it's not unusual for couples to get to a place where they do things that they wouldn't normally do. And so giving yourself the freedom to say, I need a break, and you giving your partner the freedom to take a break and say, I've said before, like, my husband needs to go away and be by himself to resolve his anger. He can't do it with me. It just never works that way. So I need to let him do that, even though that's not what I would prefer, and vice versa. So, and then he has to come back, right? He can't just stay away and independent. He has to come back and talk. Let's just go on to the last slide here before I address that. So couples who take these things to heart will guard their lives from abusive behaviors. That's what we want you to know. You may have never seen anything like this in your relationship, and we bless that. Like, that's what we want to hear and see. And yet, if things ever do come up, you know that it's not, again, it's not the only thing that's true. You can get help, you can talk through it, you can understand one another. God can do all sorts of things. So we have resources. You have agency in your life, in your relationship, and in your growth. You can become the person that you want to be. So, having said that, I want to just highlight the homework that's here. It's a great little, what I would call inventory. Finding it. There we go. It is on page 39. And again, you're not meant to take this together. This is meant for you to take on your own. And it was created for middle school and high school students, you guys. So, what does that tell you? That's where we start to create or to learn these behaviors. And so we want to just give you this opportunity to do that. And again, if anyone wants to talk to me about it, that is great. I am ready. So I would say not my favorite thing to do, but definitely we are here for you. So let's see, any questions about that? We're at 7:30 and I don't want to hold you too much longer.
So the homework is on the guide, right? The participant guide.
Yes, and there is
39,
homework.
okay.
I didn't want to move on from that other one if there were questions, but there is also homework for the shared identity part, and it starts on page 29. We have several things for you to do there. And I would highly recommend that this be done in a kind of a journaling way. So where you do your own homework and your partner does their own homework. And then you come and you talk to each other. You don't have to read the whole thing or know everything that was said, but you highlight the things that you think are important that you want to share. It's the kind of thing you have time and I would even say motivation to do right now. And it gives you a great platform on which to build from here. And as Michelle so wisely said, this is the beginning. You do not have to have all this figured out before you go in. What you have, I love to say this because what you have, even in being in this class and signing up for this class, even if you were drugged, if someone made you take it, like, you're here, and it means that you have good desires, good intentions. You want to understand, you want to learn about love, about relationships, about marriage. And so you have that is huge right now in you being able to move forward. So I think that is all that I have tonight. One last time for questions, or you can stay on. I'll be on afterward. I think Michelle's going to hang out with me.
Just a quick pitch for next week. Donald and I are teaching next week. Please watch the video because we love questions. And so we are going to come ready to answer all of your questions. It's a kind of a new topic, stuff that doesn't get talked about a lot. So watch the video so we don't have to go through and explain what we're talking about again, and be ready to rapid fire questions. We're looking forward to it.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Anybody else? Unmute and say goodbye as you're heading off.
Thank you. Great class again. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks,
Bye,
Kelly.
everyone.
Everyone.